this episode of the Leadership Speak series, I speak with Nick Henderson, co founder and director at Essai, a top end educational counseling firm. Nick works closely with Indian students aspiring to study in Ivy League colleges like Harvard and Princeton and helps to raise the quality of their college applications. Nick has helped students gain admission to the best universities in the world. In this chat, we look at several interesting aspects from a young student's point of view, such as admissions, competitive exams like the SATs, and building skills which top universities are looking for. In India, education counseling companies are expanding fast because more and more students understand the importance of systematically preparing for university admissions in top colleges. Let's hear Nick Henderson's leadership story in the 12th episode of Leadership Speaks. So my first question for you is you went to Harvard University. What do you feel is the major difference in studying in an Ivy League university or one that is not an Ivy but still really established and good?
That's a really good question. And that's a particularly good question because I work in the education sector and people ask me, they kind of ask me this a lot, but they don't really know what they're asking. I would say if you compare Harvard to a place like UC Berkeley, which is anyways has top faculty, which really is very similar in the way that these places are kind of set up and designed. Probably the main difference would be that at Harvard, every single person was very, very competitive. As in, to get to a place like Harvard, everyone has been number one in their school. Everyone is the topper. Okay, so it's this whole, you get through high school and it's very competitive and it's tough as you're discovering. But then once you get to Harvard, you realize, oh my God, everyone was at my level. And so, that instinct that pushed you, that pushed me to want to be really good in high school, that instinct, it changes a little when you get to a place like Harvard because the competition is really, really, really fierce, okay? And then the second thing is that, at Harvard, it was much more about, instead of just like who was the best, it's more about what's your interest and, are you the best of the kids who have the same interest? So at Harvard, I studied humanities, I studied philosophy. There was a bunch of people who wanted to be brain surgeons. You're not really competing with them. You're on different tracks at that point, So it's much more about, so Harvard, number one thing, I think compared to some other universities, Harvard has a student body, which is made of individuals who are really, really, really accomplished and distinguished. And then number two thing is that it's impossible to compete against some of those people because they're too good. Like Mark Zuckerberg was in my batch at Harvard. And so what you do eventually is you think, okay, well, instead of comparing myself to others, it forces you to be more internal and to think, oh, well, what do I want to study? What do I actually like? And kind of forget everyone else because that's fruitless. You're not going to be the best of the best. There's not even that need. No one even thinks of it in that way at a place like Harvard. It's all about what's your interest and how can you engage with that? And so Yeah, I'd say that's probably a big difference. Okay, that second thing's kind of the same with every big university. But good question.
Right. I think it's a whole different ballpark when you're in school and when you're in Harvard, because in school you're competing with people who you know you're better than, and in Harvard everyone's at the same level or better.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, so in school, if you're just a good kid and you're good with your studies, then it's possible to be at the top or among the best. Whereas, because of colleges like Harvard, and there's probably about 10 of them, I'd say, that are very similar, including Stanford, including Columbia, all the Ivies. Because all of those places have these very competitive, driven, ambitious people. It's a challenge for some people to make this adjustment, because their instinct, the thing that got them to Harvard, was to be the best, to push themselves, to excel, and to be really frustrated and upset with failure. Whereas once you get there, you realize that, oh yeah, failure it will happen. It happens to everyone. It is not a smooth ride in college and beyond, but that's part of the fun. And just dealing with that in a fun way kind of shows what your quality really is.
Right, totally. So after graduating from Harvard, you had endless
Yeah.
job opportunities. How and why did you decide to come to India, specifically in an industry such as college counseling, when it was still developing in India compared to other countries?
It's a very good question. I'd say a little bit of circumstance. Let me explain. So after Harvard, this was before. I don't know if you've heard of this thing called the financial crisis of 2008. Okay, so when I graduated, it was in 2006. So there were lots of jobs on Wall Street and stuff. A lot of my batchmates did that. For some reason, I don't know why, that just didn't appeal to me. And so I had this chance to, I was interested in education. I thought it was cool. So I went to teach at this good private boarding school in the UK. And then when I was there, I know I was there for 3 years. So I was really young. And when I was there, I realized nobody knew anything about colleges in the US. They knew about colleges in the UK. They thought colleges in the UK were up here. And I was like, what about Princeton? What about Yale? What about Harvard? And they sort of knew the names, but they thought Oxford and Cambridge was 10 times better. And I was like, I don't really agree. So I began teaching some of the students SATs, because nobody had even heard of this at this school. And it was a good school, but it just, they weren't familiar with the US at all. So I began teaching the SATs, and I found that I really liked it because it was really satisfying to see people's scores improve. And I felt like I could be a little competitive and I could push myself, so that the more I taught, if I taught really well, then the students' scores would go up. And so that was a way for me to measure my own impact. And so that's a really cool part of the SAT. For a kid, you get to see how much you improve. And for your tutor, they get to see how well they've done, okay, by your improvement. So anyways, I began getting ambitious because I thought I was really good at teaching the SAT. And so I then wrote a textbook with my twin brother. And this textbook, when you write a textbook, you have to convince someone to publish it because it's expensive to publish a book. So I wrote this big textbook. It was 500 pages long. It took me, I worked every night. I had a normal job, and then I worked every night and every weekend for 3-4 hours a day. And so then I made this textbook, and then I got Pearson, which is an educational company. I got Pearson to publish it, and they published it in Asia. And so then I thought, Okay. Well, education, Asia, SATs. I think that's where the opportunity is. And so then I did a bunch of research about, okay, like which countries are sending kids to the US, and that's like really hard to find. Like they don't publish that very much. And then my dad, eventually I decided I wanted to go to India because India, as you said, was totally underdeveloped. So it had people going to the US, it had people taking the SAT. In every country, apart from India, someone like me is already there. Okay, there's Harvard people, Yale people, Princeton people, and they have companies for tutoring and they have companies for counseling. And India had nothing. And so I thought, okay, well, there's a market here. Like there are people who want to go and who would probably pay for our services. There's nothing in terms of the kind of quality I knew I could give. Like I knew it. Maybe I'm kind of full of myself, but like I knew I was really good. And so, and then that's where the textbook came in handy because I started tutoring, okay? And I got a contract with the American Embassy School back like nearly like 10 years ago. And like they had to like approve of me. And so me and my twin brother, because he was helping me, we went and we like gave our presentation and we kind of like showed the textbook. And so that was like one of the reasons why we did the textbook, because we thought it would help us to get some contracts and like get some business, and it did. And so then, and then that's it. Then as of about 2012, I was pretty much in India for like 6 to 10 months a year. And I started off with SAT prep, and I then moved into counseling because I thought counseling was SAT prep. Nobody good was doing counseling. I also thought there was a huge lack of quality services. So that's a really good question. And people ask me that like literally every day.
I think that's really interesting. And talking about your book and the SATs, what do you we've seen in the past few years, this past year actually, that not all colleges are really considering the SATs. So what do you feel is the future in the USA regarding standardized testing?
Such a good question. Okay, like everyone needs to ask this question. The SAT has been around for a long time. Okay, since like 1930, there's been the SAT, so nearly 100 years. And colleges have used it for that time. And so they use it because they're looking for people who like have these certain skills, and these skills are what's tested on the SAT. And those skills include being really fast, like being a good reader. That's super important. Being like comfortable with numbers. That's really important. And so, colleges are saying, Rehan, that they're test optional, but all that means is you are allowed to apply and not give in your SAT. But if you give in your SAT, they will still look at it. And from last year, I counseled about 80 students that were doing the applications for US, and it's kind of a lot. And I had like maybe like 50 people who gave in SAT, 30 people who didn't give in SAT. And at the top colleges, at like the top 10 colleges, like the Harvard style colleges, you were at a huge disadvantage if you didn't send in a SAT. So that's what I discovered. Okay, so my feeling is that the colleges had to say that they weren't going to consider SAT, because if they had required people to take SAT, it would have looked really unfair because it was like dangerous. And the question is, will they ever require SAT again, or will they keep it at this level? I don't think they'll ever abolish SAT, okay, because the SAT is part of the way they choose students. And this system of how they choose students, this has been developed over 100 years. So they don't change that very easily. And SAT has always been a big part a big piece of information for how they decide who they want. So probably they will continue with this test optional thing. I can't see them abolishing the SAT though. I just can't. I think it would be too dramatic, and they would literally have no way to like make their decisions. Last of all, Rehan, as you'll learn that the SAT, I love the SAT. Okay, the SAT is good. I took the SAT when I was 12. Okay, because my mom just made me. She forced me. And so you got a nice mom. She's not going to force you to do that, but I might force you to take it early because a smart kid who likes reading can do surprisingly well. And it doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter where you're from. The SAT is a level playing field. So you in New Delhi can compete against a kid in New York City, and you are comparable. And that's pretty crazy. Okay, and that's like really good for you. It's not good from the kid in New York, but it's good for you because we need every advantage we can get, son. Okay? And so that's like my feeling about the SAT, where it's like it can be this cool experience and everyone says it's really miserable and hard, but like it isn't that miserable. It can be really empowering. So anyways, SAT, it's here to stay. It ain't going anywhere. And it can be like a kind of a fun part of the whole process.
Right. I think when you're applying to a university like Harvard, there's a certain level of expectations required. And
Yeah, 100%.
The SAT
100%.
does play a crucial role in it, and obviously it'll give you an advantage over someone who hasn't given the SAT.
Yeah, I kind of think so too. That's basically what I think. Where if you like, it's possible to give the SAT right now. You don't have to, but it's possible. And I think the colleges are going to think like, okay, well, it is definitely possible to give it. So if you're not, like, are you hiding something? Because at a place like Harvard or any top college, any of the top 10 or 15, like, oh yeah, the expectations are sky high. And, it's like, your grades have to be up here. And we can't, that's just about how well you do every day, every week. But then once your grades are up here, then the college is like, well, if the kids' grades are here, why isn't their SAT up here too? It's like something weird happening. And then they'll be like, oh, and if the grades and SAT are up here, why isn't the profile up here? Like, are they motivated? Like what's up with them?
Right.
So yeah, when you build a really good application to like a top college, which this project definitely could be a part of, I think that they're looking for people who can show they can do it all. Like you can have the great extracurriculars, you can have the great SAT, and you can have the awesome grades. And if you get 1, 2, 3, ding, ding, you win the lottery.
Right. A lot of the kids also don't do SAT because the propaganda that SAT is so miserable, so horrifying, so tough. So I think.
Yes. Well, yes. That is. It is good use of the word propaganda, by the way, son. Look, Rehan, just by the way you speak, I can tell that you used to enjoy reading. You probably still enjoy reading every now and then. Plus, I know your sister's a big reader too, sometimes. So you already have a skill set that you've developed over the past 10 years, literally 10 years, that's going to come in really handy on the SAT. Now, some people who don't have that skill set, okay, they do look at it and it's like they're realizing that they've made these terrible mistakes by not having read, by not having built up their vocab, okay? And so then, oh yeah, it's super difficult. It can be very painful to take the SAT and discover like you are not close to the level you want to hit. But on the other side, if you work hard and if you train smart, it is really empowering to see yourself improve. Like it makes you feel powerful. It makes you feel like you can do stuff. Okay. And that's like a really good feeling. And when you feel like you can't do stuff, like you're out of control and you're frustrated, that's a terrible feeling. So that's a feeling that I try to, that's a feeling I try to explain in my counseling. It's a feeling I've built my whole business around, okay, that people like competing. People like getting in. As an entrepreneur, which I am, basically you could say that my company is all about, do people enjoy the thrill of competition? Do my students and their parents who pay me to advise them, do they find it satisfying and meaningful to get a good outcome, to win? Okay? Because this is a game, and it's a very difficult game, and the rules are really tricky. And so what me and my colleagues do, my counselors, we help our students to understand and interpret the rules of this game. So my business kind of has a lot in common with like a law firm, kind of, okay? Because I'm here, and this stuff I've been doing just because I've done it the longest. The others are like as good as me, but I kind of have the experience. And so then, with my senior colleagues who are like here, it's like, just people I've known for years, together we kind of come up with ways to help, our junior colleagues to understand what does it really take. So, this whole process is this constant process of training, because I want all of my colleagues to know as much as I do. That's really hard, okay? But I want every single person in my company to be really, really good, so that every single person in my company can show to every single student we work with that, like, we're going to give you the best advice you can get. We're going to give you the best help you can get. So this is really a people business. And the people are like people like your sister and your dad and you one day. And the other people are my colleagues who I found and I trained, and I've created the ways for them to, the stuff that I've helped them understand what they have to know in order to counsel effectively. And all of that stuff just comes from here. It comes from my experience. And so as I get more experience, I get better and better at it. That's the fun part.
Certainly. And talking about reading, talking about college, and this leads me to my next question. What is one book you enjoy and recommend for my age group?
Man, that's a great question. That's like asking someone, what's their favorite song? It's so hard. Recommend for your age group. Okay, but so your age group in India is not consistently like you. You are unusually good. I think there's a book that's called The Catcher in the Rye. This is written in like 1950 in America. So like, it doesn't have that much in common with like Indian teenagers in 2021, but like, it's about this kid and he's kind of confused. He's like a little messed up. And the things it talks about, the themes it talks about loss, about confusion, about anger. Yeah, this is like a really powerful book. And that's what, there's many books like this that have young people as the main character, and like you can really relate to them. So yeah, Catcher in the Rye. Okay, check it out, kid. I think you'll find it weird but fun.
I'll definitely read that. I'll just go at it.
You've got to.
Yeah. My last question is...
Oh, no, you have so many good questions. Okay. Oh, I like question 6. Some counseling companies in India and worldwide are expanding very fast. Yes, they are. It's crazy. Okay, there's this one company. It's called Crimson Education. They're...
I've heard of that.
You've heard of them. So they have $120 million of private equity investment. $120 million. That's a lot. That's a lot for like a tech company. Okay. And so what they've done is they're creating this kind of standardized model for counseling. Okay. So that it's a sophisticated model. There's many parts to it, but fundamentally, the challenge in counseling is, how do you scale? okay, because there's only one of me. And well, I have a twin brother, all right? And so the difficulty from the interesting business question is, can you create systems and intellectual property and resources that people think are valuable without my direct involvement? And like, that's a really interesting question, man. And if anyone can crack that, then yeah, they'll make a lot of money, okay? And maybe I can crack it, but I just like working with young people too much. And so, it's sort of like maybe in 10 years or 5 to 10 years, I could see gradually developing systems which I felt were really strong and which got really good results. And like, I wouldn't even be involved. That could be possible, but I'd say that I think a lot of companies are doing digital stuff, like just making like digital videos. But like, I personally think there's a limit to that, because I want to give the best advice. When it's you, I want to know you. If I'm giving advice to you, Rehan, I want to know you inside and out. And you want me to know you inside and out. And you don't want to watch some video. Because guess what? You can do that on YouTube anytime you want, because there's a ton of resources already out there. So I think that this question is a really exciting business question, and it shows you're thinking in the right business way. And I think the answer has to include really good, being able to create internal training methods so that your counselors are super good. I have like 30 counselors and they're all really good. If I had 3,000 counselors, would they all still be good? That's the question, And so that's like really hard to do. But if anyone can crack that, maybe you can crack it. You tell me how to do it, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, you don't know if the 3,000 counselors will be as good as the 30 counselors, because
I don't know. Yeah, look, that's where the business comes in. That's where the investment in human relations, in training, in hiring, in getting feedback from clients, like all of that stuff, I think in theory could be possible. It's just that, if you have, it's like if I have 3,000 counselors, instead of, then the company becomes like Starbucks, okay? And Starbucks, like, Starbucks, when you enter Starbucks, you know exactly what you're going to get. It's the exact same, no matter if you're in Bangalore or if you are in Bangor, Maine. It looks the same. It tastes the same. That's why people like it. Now, would people like a counseling service to have the same standardized quality? I don't know. It's interesting. Maybe, but maybe markets are different. Like most of my students are from India, and I feel like I understand the landscape in India really well. If I took on like 20 students in China, I don't know anything about China, so I don't know the exam systems. I don't know what the grades mean. So it would just be very different. There'd have to be a lot of internal training. Now, ask your last question, man. I'm really enjoying this.
So my last question is, what is your number one tip for youngsters like me who wish to be entrepreneurs when they grow up?
Oh, that's a good question. Boy. Okay. So look, a lot of people, I think, have different approaches to entrepreneurship. Mine would definitely be that I think you've got to get deep domain knowledge. Okay, when I say domain, I mean like good knowledge in one thing, so you can do it better than anyone, and then you can understand it inside and out, and then you can come up with that valuable business idea. And so that domain, well, for me, it's education, okay? And specifically college admissions, but I know about high school stuff, okay? For another person, it could be food. It could be the restaurant industry. Okay, for another person, it could be cars. It could be the car business. And so I think that the biggest thing for an entrepreneur, and for you in particular, Rehan, would be to realize that to be an entrepreneur, you have to convince people you know a lot more than them. You have to convince your customers. You have to convince your investors, okay? And I think, and most importantly, you have to convince yourself. So the only way to do that third one, and that third one's the most important thing, okay? So that third one, I think my philosophy, which is different than other people's, is that my philosophy is to pick a sector which excites you, to learn as much as you can in high school, in college, in your first job, okay? And then you learn the business skills side by side, so then you can understand how to grow, how to scale, how to market, everything like that. So then at the end, you have this really good business skill set and this really good domain knowledge, and then they combine with something pretty damn cool, okay? I think that's the roadmap, son.
So I think that kind of means having a specialization in a specific industry.
Having an interest in a specific industry, yeah, and then eventually having a specialization within that. Yeah, 100%. Okay, and that industry can be anything. Okay, and if you're smart, you'd be like, oh, well, what are the growth industries? That's what that term means. Okay, and you think like, well, education, healthcare. Okay, that's where economics comes in, because economics is this like really big picture. It's like looking and seeing the whole picture, okay? And economics is not really helpful to business, except economics can help you to understand like the big trends, okay? Whereas business skills are very different, because it's about communication, it's about planning, it's about marketing, branding. So business is very creative in that way.
Right. So
Pick a sector, son, okay?
So I'll definitely keep that in mind when I'm going to be an entrepreneur.
Very cool.
Thank you so much. And that concludes my chat with Nick Henderson, education counselor for Ivy League university admissions. Here are two of my key learnings. First, at Harvard, it's impossible to compete with other students because everyone is already best of their class. Instead, Harvard students are encouraged to focus inwards. This was a unique perspective for me. As a student, we always keep comparing scores and achievements with our other classmates. However, our thinking should be bigger than that. The real challenge is always to compete with ourselves and not with others. Second, the key requirement of an entrepreneur is that you need to convince your customers and investors that you know a lot more than them. The only way we can do this is if we develop domain knowledge or specialization in a topic that interests us. If we gain expertise in any one thing, we will then have a platform which we can build our business ideas on. This is the 12th in a series of my interviews with leaders who have achieved great success in their lives. If you enjoyed watching, please do hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I'll be releasing my next Leadership Speaks podcast very soon. Till then, think positive, have big goals, and focus on the road ahead.